Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Justice Now. My name is Leah Jones, and I am the Education Coordinator for Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. Today, we have the pleasure of doing a special show this Friday to reflect on our actions, events, and experiences this Earth Month. So what makes this show extra special this afternoon is that today I am joined by almost all of our VAIPL team. We have both Faith and Kadesh here. I know our audience has met you all before, both of you, but for those who have never tuned in, would you all like to take this time to introduce yourselves? Faith? Oh.
Hi, I'm Faith Harris. I am co-director for Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and I'm happy to be here today.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Kadesh, and I am the Communications and Organizing Coordinator for Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and I am glad to be here today.
Thank you both so much for being here and taking this time to pause and kind of step into ourselves and our thoughts after such a busy month. So just to kind of ground us for a discussion and reflection on all the things that we were able to do experience this month, I would like to read from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Just this beautiful story, so I hope you all enjoy it as well. The Sky Woman's story, shared by the original peoples throughout the Great Lakes, is a constant star in the constellations of teachings we call the original instructions. These are not instructions like commandments, though, or rules. Rather, they are like a compass. They provide an orientation, but not a map. The work of living is creating that map for yourself. How to follow the original instructions will be different for each of us and different for every era. In their time, Sky Women's first people lived by their understanding of the original instructions, with ethical prescriptions for respectful hunting, family life, ceremonies that made sense for their world. Those measures for caring might not seem to fit in today's urban world where green means an advertising slogan, not a meadow. The buffalo are gone and the world has moved on. I can't return salmon to the river, and my neighbors would raise the alarm if I set fire to my yard to produce pasture for elk. The earth was new then, when it welcomed the first human. It's old now, and some suspect that we have worn out our welcome by casting the original instructions aside. From the very beginning of the world, the other species were a lifeboat for the people. Now we must be theirs. But the stories that might guide us, if they are told at all, grow dim in the memory. What meaning would they have today? How can we translate from the stories at the world's beginning to this hour so much closer to its end? The landscape has changed, but the story remains. And as I turn it over again and again, Sky Woman seems to look me in the eye and ask, in return for this gift of a world on Turtle's back, what will I give in return? Is it good to remember that the original woman was herself an immigrant? She fell a long way from her home in the sky world, leaving behind all who knew her and who held her dear. She could never go back. Since 1492, most here are immigrants as well, perhaps arriving on Ellis Island without even knowing that Turtle Island rested beneath their feet. Some of my ancestors are Sky Woman's people, and I belong to them. Some of my ancestors were the newer kind of immigrants too. A French fur trader, an Irish carpenter, a Welsh farmer, and here we all are on Turtle Island, trying to make a home. Their stories of arrivals with empty pockets and nothing but hope resonate with Sky Woman's. She came here with nothing but a handful of seeds and the slimmest of instructions to use your gifts and dreams for good. The same instructions we all carry. She accepted the gifts from the other beings with open hands and used them honorably. She shared the gifts she brought from Skyworld as she set herself about the business of flourishing, of making a home. Perhaps the Sky Woman's story endures because we too are always falling. Our lives, both personal and collective, share her trajectory. Whether we jump or are pushed or the edge of the known world just crumbles at our feet, we fall spinning into someplace new and unexpected. Despite our fears of falling, the gifts of the world stand by to catch us. As we consider these instructions, it is also good to recall that when Sky Woman arrived here, she did not come alone. She was pregnant. Knowing her grandchildren would inherit the world she left behind, she did not work for flourishing in her time only. It was through her actions of reciprocity, the give and the take with the land, that the original immigrant became indigenous. For all of us, becoming indigenous to a place means living as if your children's future mattered, to take care of the land as if our lives, both material and spiritual, depended on it. In the public arena, I've heard the Sky Woman's story told as a babble of colorful folklore. But even when it's misunderstood, there is power in the telling. Most of my students have never heard the origin of this land where they were born, but when I tell them, something begins to kindle behind their eyes. Can we all understand the Sky Woman story, not as an artifact from the past, but as instructions for the future? Can a nation of immigrants once again follow her example to become a narrative, to become a native, to make a home? Look at the legacy of poor Eve's exile from Eden. The land shows the bruises of an abusive relationship. It's not just land that is broken, but more importantly, our relationship to the land. As Gary Nabin has written, we can't meaningfully proceed with healing, with restoration, without restoration. In other words, our relationship with land cannot heal until we hear its stories. But who will tell them? In the Western tradition, there's a recognized hierarchy of beings, with, of course, humans being at the top, the pinnacle of evolution, the darling of creation, and plants at the bottom. But in Native ways of knowing, human people are often referred to as the younger brothers of creation. We say that humans have the least experience with how to live and thus the most to learn. We must look to our teachers among the other species for guidance. Their wisdom is apparent in the way they live. They teach us by example. They've been on Earth far longer than we have been and have had time to figure things out. They live both above and below the ground, joining sky world to the earth. Plants know how to make food and medicine from light and water, and they give it away. I like to imagine that when Sky Woman scattered her handful of seeds across Turtle Island, she was sowing sustenance for the body and also for the mind, emotion, and spirit. She was leaving us teachers. The plants can tell us her story. We need to learn to listen. And that's the end of the excerpt. So I really wanted to read that story today because I think it tells a great story of how we need to seek value in caring for creation and recognizing how much the earth gives us and returning that gift to earth itself in order for us both to heal. So, yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Leah, for reading from Grading Fruitgrass about the beautiful creation story from the original peoples of this land. And so even as we have created for ourselves a ritual for most of our meetings with environmental groups and environmental justice groups that I've been in recently, we always open these meetings oftentimes with a acknowledgement of the land that we're the original people of the land. And right now I'm in the land of the Pamunkey people. And most of us who live in the Richmond area, Central Virginia area, are also part on that same original people's land, and recognizing that it is their rightful land is also critically important to recognizing that we're all immigrants. So thank you so much for that story of creation. The story also helps us center our conversation today on the sacredness of Earth and Earth Day. Story is so incredibly important to our sense of belonging and what we value. And we had a very exciting and busy Earth Month creating new stories with our faith communities and members across the state. I'm sure many listening today or watching today may also have experienced activities and events recognizing our interconnectedness and our interdependence with Earth. And let's recap some of our activities. Kadest.
Yeah, and to do that, we're just gonna have a conversation amongst us to talk about how Earth Month was like at VIPL and all the good things that we've done with our faith communities across the Commonwealth, as well as our partner organization, RACE, which is the Interfaith Cares at Roanoke. So to start it off, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. So Earth Day was originally founded to bring national attention to the environment, and it also was sparked by the passage of many bedrock environmental standards, as well as the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. What was your perception of Earth Day when you first learned about it, and has that perception changed at all? And if so, how has that changed? Faith, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I'm going to start us off as the old person on the group. I remember very vividly the beginning of Earth Day, and the recognition of how important the environment is to our life. And so, as a young person, kind of being formed and shaped in my thinking about politics and society, I recognized how critically important even then Earth Day was for us to take a time to recognize that we are part of the earth, that the earth is actually the very thing that gives us life, and I've always had a great appreciation for that. And but in some ways I also took it for granted, right? And so not until, let's say, the last 25 30 years have I really recognized just how important that time was for me, and really how much it impacted my life. So I could think about all the ways through my university studies that how I just kind of gravitated to studies about ecosystems, but also not just out of curiosity, but also like focusing sometimes the themes of my papers, particularly in seminary, were often related to earth and creation stories. And I never even realized that before until looking back on that. So, and then now, becoming even more involved over the last 10 years or so, because of some of the because of the recognition of climate change and all the ways that that's impacting the people that I know and people that I love and the people that have been impacted traumatically because of climate change.
And for me, it's really cool that you got to see the very beginning of Earth Month, or the very beginning of Earth Day and the holiday itself. Like, because for me, I remember it not really being a big deal at all outside of just a special week where we probably get some sunflower seeds that we each get to grow and germinate in a little baggie, and maybe put some soil in later, and maybe recycle. We also learn about that, which I think still today rings true in a lot of cases when we think about Earth Day and how we celebrate it. It's like, let's celebrate the things grow in the ground, and recycling, because that's apparently one of the only ways that we can really make a difference in our in our Earth's well-being. But now it's funny that it's totally changed just as I've stepped into myself and, grown into my identity, and finding ways that the earth, finding out that, Earth Day is much more than just the seeds that we put in a cup of soil. It's the relationships that we have to the earth. It's how systems, government, state agencies regulate the earth, regulate our environments, and how that affects people as well. So for me, it's crazy how much that's totally shifted. What about you, Kadest?
I feel like I have a similar kind of experience as you, Leah, and a little bit of the sentiment of the aha moment that Faith had of realizing everything was connected. Because I grew up in Ethiopia, being very aware of environmental degradation and injustice at the right directly affecting my life. So Earth Day and like the idea of caring for Earth was emphasized, but also direct, as you said, Leah, was emphasized through soil care, which is kind of funny because that's also the theme for our Faith Climate Action Week this year. But we went around and planted millions of trees and set records by schools to plant trees, to help out with cooling temperatures and making sure people are not desertified, right? Like our land is not being it's not turning into a desert. That was the primary focus of Earth Day. So I was always associating it with the ground and the earth, never with people and the air we breathe and then the water, right? So coming here and now and understanding, like you said, bettering my identity and as a Black woman and understanding my experiences growing up and who I am as an immigrant also shaped my understanding and my connection to Earth and my environment and my surroundings. So that has changed for me to understand Earth Day to be beyond just our connection to the Earth, but also what we are doing beyond taking care of it. How are we mending our relationship and changing our perspective to prioritize environmental care as well as as much as we prioritize self-care, right? So that has definitely changed my connection to the earth and appreciation of the earth.
Can I say one more thing before we move on? Because I just thought of the very first camping trip that I went on was kind of this wilderness camping trip, and this was about 33 years ago, maybe even a little, might have been 35 years ago. And we had to camp we went to northern neck of the northern peninsula in Michigan, right? And to this area called Loon Lake. And we had to actually backpack in 5 miles. You could canoe in or you could backpack in 5 miles to our campsite. And it was, completely dark at night, and the sky would light up. And that, I think, from the stars, right? And from the moon. And the reflection off the lake brought light to us, along with our little, campfire. But that was really like the first time that I recognized not just the beauty of the earth. I've always loved playing in the woods as a child and all that stuff, but also the connection, like sleeping on the ground, and how just in a few days after, being there a few days, how relaxed and at peace we were because we were, off the clock. But not only because we were off the clock, but because in some ways the earth was kind of hugging us. It was, at night we would kind of prostrate ourselves on our back and look up at the stars and just watch the earth, the sky move. And it was just such a beautiful experience. And I've repeated that numerous times through camping trips. And there's nothing like being connected to the earth without, technology and without all of those things. And I know for some people that's like way too much, they don't want to deal with the bugs and the dirt and all that. But that was for me another catalyst, another kind of landmark experience for me about how the earth can restore me. Like just being outdoors can bring new life and new energy to my thinking, to my body, to my emotions. And so that's another little story that I wanted to share.
Wow, I love that. Maybe we should have a whole nother conversation about what moment made you realize you were in love with the world we live on. But anyways, we do have to keep moving. I was just wondering what you all's favorite moments were from Earth Month. We were quite busy this month, as we stated. So maybe, Kadest, do you have any moments in particular you want to share first, or?
Yeah. So my favorite parts, well, we did a lot of garden blessing ceremonies across Virginia, the Commonwealth. So I can't say like there was one specific ceremony that I like better than the other. And I've tried to, engage with all of them. If I wasn't able to attend the Roanoke ones, but I did watch all the videos, and they were all amazing. And I think my favorite part of those moments though was the community that showed up, right? As whenever we were in the south side of Richmond or even in Roanoke, I remember one of our amazing interns, shout out to Phyllis Cox for doing amazing work with our communities in Roanoke. She mentioned that there were some 40 people at one of the garden blessing ceremonies, and that is crazy to me that folks on a rainy day showed up and took the time to dedicate the ground and celebrate the ground and the earth and actively say, yeah, we are a community that care about, the soil and we care about where our food comes from. We care about nurturing the community. So that was my favorite part, just to hear that there were 40 plus people there. I was just like, yes. So I would say that was my favorite part. What about you, Faith? What was your favorite part?
Yeah, I think for me, some of the favorite parts were also the garden blessings. I really appreciated the first garden blessing that we did here in the Richmond area with Shanna Williams, the Williams City farm. Here's a woman who, on her own, purchased an empty lot, you know, prepared the soil, purchased with her own money seeds and equipment, and created this just a beautiful oasis right on the north side where she is growing all kinds of vegetables and fruits, and giving them. When she first started off, giving them away to the community members. It's a older community with a number of senior citizens, and she would give them the produce, just drop it off their door without any, just leaving bags on their porches of fresh vegetables and fruit. And then she would also give it to the Boys and Girls Club, which is directly across from the garden. And I just think about what that means. And she told me, when the first time I met her was a couple of years ago, and she told me she just had to get her hands into the soil, that she grew up learning how to garden and farm in South New Jersey, and it was something she needed to do in order to feel whole and complete, and it was her identity. And I loved that story about her, and so that was a really great experience for me, going out there and spending that time. It was a rainy day as well, and spending that time with her and watching and learning from her how important it is to grow food.
Well, one of my favorite memories or moments, in addition to all of the garden blessings, was also just this past week, the show that we had this past Friday on transportation. We talked about zero fare in Virginia. And that was actually just, for those of you who are able to or are interested, please go back to our live videos. The whole thing is recorded there, the whole show. But it was a really educational and session where I was able, whenever I hear, whenever I watch a webinar or a discussion on transit in Virginia, I feel like I learn something new every time, especially because it's just something that I haven't thought about. And I think that speaks to the issue itself, right? The fact that I don't know very much about the Virginia transit system, and particularly like public transit, like the bus. I don't know outside of what I remember when I was a child with my grandmother who rode the bus all the time. So definitely tons of moments to remember. We didn't even get to talk about all of them. But I think we should continue on to our next question now. And Faith, I think you wanted to give a shout out really quickly to the steering committee.
Yeah, I want to shout out our steering committee. Virginia IPL has a really great and wonderful steering committee that is very active and very just people that have had their own reckoning with not just concerns about climate change and environmental degradation, but also about justice and equity. And so they wrote just an incredibly beautiful, well thought out piece, that op-ed, and that was published with the Virginia Mercury a couple of weeks ago. And their op-ed in the Mercury was titled "A Focus on Equity This Earth Day." And they wrote this for Earth Day, but their original title was Black Environments Matter. And they, in this op-ed, they discussed all the ways that justice and environment and equity and restoration of the earth relate and are interconnected to what it means to be actually, fully engaged in environmental work. That environments, the title Black Environments Matter includes the recognition that justice is critically important to what it means to be in harmony and in balance with the earth. That we, in fact, recognize that in their article, we recognize how critically important it is for our social and cultural justices and policies and the way that our economy works actually impacts the environmental health of Black folk in this country. And so that was, I think, one of the really critical highlights of this Earth Month as well, that our steering committee made that connection. And the steering committee is not necessarily, they're not young necessarily, they're not necessarily hip, they're not necessarily in the protest movement, but they get that connection to why climate change, environmental degradation and protecting and mitigating against climate change is critically important to the Black Lives Matter movement. And so that was important. That was another important action that was taken this month and by our steering committee.
To kind of wrap up our discussion, I do want to recognize that the work that we do to establish environmental justice, to raise up climate justice, to speak up for Earth, especially in today's climate, can be exhausting and challenging. So how do you remain grounded and focused while doing this work?
Well, I'll jump in here. I think for me, the way that I remain grounded is the very thing we started the conversation about, by making time to connect to not just the other people in my life who care about this, the planet, care about Earth and care about the connections to the Earth, but also to actually myself make those connections, by taking nice long walks in wooded areas, by making sure that I empower myself through my connection to the earth, and connection to the environment.
Yeah, and I can totally relate to that, because I also, try to see my connection and the work that I do and my connection to Earth as a spiritual connection, right? And which is why I love working at Virginia VAIPL. And this is what also keeps me grounded and doesn't make me go, too crazy and cranked out with when things go wrong, or when a campaign doesn't go all the way as we would like it to go. A lot of times I try to see the work that I do as a thing that centers me and allows me to give back to what has raised me, right? And I think I try to see the work that I do to achieve environmental justice as a giving back to the earth. So in a way, when I really I'm feeling down, and then I feel a little bit burnt out, if I go back to that and if I meditate on that, and with that, I would try to connect to the earth and try to put my literal feet on the ground and go outside and try to connect and meditate on that thought. It helps me to center my nerves and then the challenges, and can become a little bit more hurdles that I can get over than like a burnout that I can't ever get out of. So what about you, Leah?
For me, I think it's definitely also some of the things that you all said, in the sense of like seeing the value that of the gift that Earth is, like, even going, well, let me start here. You could be having the worst day ever, and you leave the house and you just go for a walk, you take a bike ride, you play around in the yard, in your garden, whatever the case may be. And it's like you can just have the space to breathe. The thoughts don't, you literally can just be. And the earth expects nothing in return. And that in a world that asks so much of you, when the earth itself doesn't request anything of you, it's so restorative and healing. And I think that's why, like, bringing Sweetgrass, the reading that I just did earlier today, that's why I think it resonated so much with me, because it's like that gift right there, and recognizing that, wanting to share that with other people who I know that may not have gotten that opportunity as much, not due to any fault of their own, is one of the things that helps ground me in the work that I do, and helps me to remain focused, and something to fall on when I do feel like I'm falling. So I think that that is also something that we should take away with us as we finish up this Earth Month. And that's something that I'm taking away with me this Earth Month, anyways. What are you all taking away?
Leah, let me go back to this other question that we considered when we were planning for this show, and the idea of that we recognize that our current social and political climate, as you know, as the Black Lives Matter op-ed also recognized, that we have all around us trauma, right? That we're have all this additional traumatizing experiences. In addition to struggling for environmental justice, right? And so, the working for environmental justice can and has been, balancing for us in some ways, or for me, let's put it this way, because I know that the work that I'm doing ultimately will lead to healthier communities, fresher, cleaner air, affordable access to clean water, drinkable water, right? Also that, working on transportation, public transportation, and trying to expand that and make it more equitable also requires, will provide a higher quality of life for the very people who are often so left out, or have had, experiences of injustices, and who are, trying to navigate through all of these kind of traumatizing experiences. And so in many ways, the work that I do in environmental justice, and in trying to mitigate climate change, right? Even the climate change work that I do has a way of being healing to me as well, because I'm healing somebody else. I'm giving and I'm providing, maybe policy information, education, opportunities to, like in the blessing, opportunities to come together and to pray, or to meditate, or to think about how important it is for us to be community. And I think the work that we do is in itself sometimes exhausting, but it's also healing and restorative, particularly when we see good outcomes. And so I did want to focus on that. And that's what I take away from this Earth Month, that we did quite a bit. We had a lot of activity and frenzied busyness, but we know that the little work that we're able to do is building towards better, more meaningful quality of life for the people, for all of us actually, and for the people that we serve.
Thanks, Faith. On that note, I think we'll use that to wrap things up and say thank you all to everyone who attended all of our events this past Earth Month, who stayed true with us, took actions, not even with us, but on their own as well, in their own communities. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.